Thank you.
Sorry, Maji.
No,
Now
no
you're being
problem.
recorded.
So I'm here this morning because I promised you I will get back to you about questions in terms of the short-term rentals during the workshop last week.
Yeah.
And that was in regard to the process. The question was, can the commissioners go ahead and process, potentially a new title in our county code without going through the planning commission?
Right.
So that question is, it depends on how you want to phrase the short-term rental in regard to the newly adopted RCW 6437 about short-term rentals. But I thought about it this weekend, and I think we might run into some issues with the zoning ordinance. Because the way that the zoning ordinance is set up right now is one dwelling per legal parcel in almost all zoning districts. It's only one zoning district will allow more than one, and I don't believe we currently have that anywhere in the county, which would be like R3 is multifamily residential. We don't have that. And some zoning would just not allow single family outright, such as general industrial or industrial park. You cannot have that. So it's one dwelling per legal parcel. If we have this separate regulations to allow for short-term rentals, like, if they meet all those requirements similar to the city of White Salmon, Lynn talked about we need to have that as a permitted structure. That means it will trigger some kind of building permit. Building permits would go through planning department. So unless the parcel is vacant, then we can sign off on it, no problem. But if they already have an existing dwelling, and if they want to have another structure as a dwelling, and only for short-term rental purposes, planning will not be able to sign off on that. So right now, if we want to have more than one dwelling on a legal parcel, they have to either go through an ADU, which short-term rentals were not allowed, or as a farm dwelling. And the purpose for that is for farm workers, not for short-term rentals. We do have some temporary mobile home that is available out there, but those are grandfather provisions. When we adopted our ADU ordinances in 2014, the temporary mobile home is no longer, in our zoning code. So my concern is you may be able to go ahead and proceed with adopting another kind of regulations as a part of the county code, but we will not be able to sign off on that unless the parcel is vacant, have no other dwelling on there right now.
Or we open up the zoning codes and get into that next.
Yes, and that would be something that we need to go through the planning commission, go through the public process. When we try to get this ADU in place for over 10, 15 years, there's a lot of concerns with more than one dwelling on the parcels. Concerns about traffic, water resources and that kind of thing. And of course, when we open up the zoning ordinance, we have to go through the CFA process. We have to go through the public process. And those are all doable, we can do it. But I just want to let you know ahead of time. It might be better to go through the zoning code amendment before we go through another, creating a new title. Because if you have that, it's very limited. Parcels will be benefit from that provision.
So what you're saying, let me get this right, is that if we adopt a new code title for short-term rental ordinance, that if somebody wants to use an existing house, you wouldn't be able to sign off on it?
If this is an existing house,
Yeah.
then it doesn't go through planning. Because I'm assuming the new title is not administered through planning.
So we could adopt a new ordinance, the ordinance that doesn't need to go through planning because it's with existing structures. And if you want to build like a house or something on a parcel of land and then use it, that would be fine.
Right.
The issue is only if you want to use an ADU, which is what Skamania County did. They opened up and amended their comprehensive plan and their zoning because they adopted like our ADU ordinance and they had the same language. And so then they opened it up and they did it all at once. So as long as you're not using an ADU, we could adopt just a short-term rental ordinance through its own process.
Right, if
And
you
then
only
if
have
we
one
want to
dwelling.
do with one dwelling, of course,
Yes.
with one dwelling. If you want to use the ADU, then that goes through the process.
Yes.
Through,
Or any
Now,
other
when you're
permitted
saying-
structure,
when
because
you're-
that was the debate last Thursday.
Right,
was
but I
about
think
permitted structures.
if I'm hearing her right, it's one dwelling per parcel. If that's the one you live in, you can't rent that thing over there, whatever it happens to be. Is that what you're saying? Just one dwelling per structure or one dwelling rental per structure? Or
One dwelling per parcel,
per
is
Right.
like
So you
planning
can have
101.
one dwelling per parcel. And then RCW 6437, it restricts, so if you want to rent the whole house out, because this is a legal structure and the short-term rental is administered under a different title, not Title 19, the zoning code. So planning will have no say in this because we're not a part of the process. If you want to rent the whole house out. If you want to rent out a room, our zoning ordinance in some zoning districts will already allow that permitted outright. And under the statute, it's actually not considered as a short-term rental.
No.
And so, that's not the point. So it's whether you want to rent out the whole house as a short-term rental.
Right, I guess where I'm understanding it is if I want to live in the house and I want to rent my tiny home or my chicken coop or whatever we decided, the TP, the whatever's over there, you're saying that's a second dwelling.
Yes.
You can't do that.
Without opening
Then
the
I
zoning
cannot
code.
sign off.
Because then that permit, that application would go to planning. And planning would have to say no, because it's a second dwelling on a parcel and our current zoning, other than R3 multifamily, doesn't allow more than one residence. Because ADUs are not, they're accessory.
Correct. Which is why I brought up when we were talking about this, that I want to get in and open up zoning in Title 19 as well.
I guess in terms of direction, my first thought would be to keep, when we open up zoning, that can be its own can of worms.
Uh-huh.
And so I would rather build the short-term rental, what we
What we
want
can,
the ordinance to
and-
be, because it sits in its own title. And then we can do it concurrently or something else, but have something else separately running to do the zoning side.
Right, and I'd like to do our own ordinance, so essentially when they're doing their thing over at planning, they know what we're trying to accomplish.
Right.
They're not trying to do their own thing. They're following our guidance to try to do our thing instead of their thing. So yes, I would agree with that. Okay.
Dave?
I think
So
we
what does that,
understand.
but what does that mean to you is what I'm,
I assume my building is the one who is the lead on this one.
right.
And I did talk with Lynn briefly last Thursday. And I suggested maybe before we bring this back to the commissioners, like 4 primary departments, building, planning, public works and health, we need to sit down and really talk about how can we tie everything together. Because I understand the intent and I think that's a great idea because we have issues where the problem out there, we need to take care of that. In terms of tying everything together is, we all have our different sets of rules. And we need to make sure there's no conflict.
Right.
Yeah, I think what it's gonna come down to is if we make an ordinance, some of them are not gonna be legal because they don't meet the zoning
Right.
situation, but hell, none of them are legal right now. So what did we really change by making a short term? You know, we might have legalized a couple of them, but then I still think we need to do ours before we push it over so they know where our guidance is. I don't necessarily want them doing all the legwork and us just saying yes and no on it.
Yeah, I think I'm fine with, I think we should write our short-term rental ordinance for what we want,
Uh-huh.
as far as that piece of it. And if that includes, if we're using the the definition of permitted structures, that I don't necessarily have an issue with that. It's going to be, but the issue is going to be if somebody submits an application, for one, and it says permitted structures and it's a second dwelling, it's going to get routed to planning. And right now planning is going to say, no, we can't do that because, and so that's where the discussion is really going to be as far as when we look at opening up the zoning code. So I'm fine because I think the short-term rental ordinance should be what we want, let's not put that language in there until we change the other thing. Go ahead and put it in there because it's not going to be the kind of the stuff can't happen is still not going to happen now, but probably a lot of stuff that it's not possible to do now. You could, I mean, if you were doing, and so
that's my thing.
and we also get some experience with it legally, that these are getting operated legally. The ones that can now, we legitimize those. Because I suspect when we open the zoning code about, not just because if you're opening it, you're opening it.
Mhm.
This is gonna take some time because that is gonna go through the planning commission. They're gonna have public hearings. There's the potential for SEPA. Okay, not potential. I would give you, 99 out of 100 odds that it will get.
I'm just
appealed.
thinking also with the other departments, if we make ours first, it's gonna give guidance to the department heads, whether it's building, planning, health, whatever, on what we're trying to accomplish, versus them trying to guess what we're trying to accomplish and set their rules according to guessing what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, the only issue I would have with that is I don't think we should just draft an ordinance, a vacation ordinance that without talking to the departments about what we should be doing.
Right, no, and I'm not saying we're good, well.
I mean, I think we
would say
could
not
have a
enforce-
draft.
Right, that's what I'm saying, not
Yeah, no.
and vote it in, but I want to draft it. This is what we want. Tell us how we can either accomplish this or what is not going to be allowed.
Right.
That's
No,
what
I'm
I'm
fine with
looking
that.
for.
I think we're a long ways down that path already. with
Right.
The draft that Lynn did. I think that's enough that it would be good for the department heads to get together and look.
I would
at that
like to
draft.
see what we've changed it to agree to what we've changed it to. I guess I'd say we've added this and added that, taken out this and switched this around. That was my understanding, that I would like us to kind of look at it, even if it's for 5 minutes, and go, yeah, no, this is exactly what we thought we were gonna do. And then, because we're not handing them the exact papers that Lynn made. If you remember, we agreed with the definition that was in Lynn's paperwork, but Dave wanted to change. So we've adopted whatever it was, Skamania County added permitted structures, and Lynn was supposed to throw something in there about temporary structure. I want to see how that's worded before I forward that on for the next batch of people to look at, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, because I would say we left it,
We tweaked it enough.
We
that I wanna
did.
look
It's
at it a little
really
bit
the
before
draft
we
is
pass it on
right.
again. I don't think it's gonna take 3 hours of looking at, 5 minutes of looking at might answer the question.
Do we need to do that in public meeting, or do we just need to get Lynn to send it over and?
I think we can provide our,
Provide the
what
comments.
the comments as
And
far as,
so
and
these
then,
guys can get moving though.
right.
Yeah,
Get it.
I mean,
I
as
think
long
that's
as it comes over, I don't know, I mean, we might have to have discussion on what's said too, so.
Right.
We can at least look at it and decide then whether we need to have discussion next week on it. If it looks good to all three of us, then obviously we don't. So I guess it would come down to
Yeah,
what
I think
each of our
Lynn
answers
can-
to Lynn is, and if
Yeah.
somebody's a dissenting vote, I'd like to,
Yeah,
even
no,
if there's one dissenting vote,
right.
I think we should have discussion.
Well, because I think where we left it on Thursday was there was at least consensus on, and I think Lynn, because it was somewhat modified. It was, Skamania County model with this added, this taken away. And I would be curious from Lynn as far as what her interpretation of that, where she would redraft the draft. Here's the final draft, and then we can.
I just want to be able to see her new verbiage
Right.
sign off on it myself.
Yeah.
And say, yes, this is the direction, you know, and if we're all three in consensus of that, then fine, move forward. But
Right.
if
And if we're
somebody's-
not, then we'll have the
if one
discussion.
person
If there's,
isn't, let's have 5 minutes, and,
Right.
you know.
and if it's, then it's fine. And again, it's still just a draft. So,
Right.
So
Okay.
there's a difference between permitting and licensing. And I think for the new title, it's more like licensing for a permitted
Right.
structure,
Right.
not like permitting it through a CUP or administrative
Right.
approval. or anything
I want
like
to
that.
jump through the least amount of hoops as possible
Right.
for this. I don't want people to have to go reinvent the wheel or.
So my thought would be is once we see this from Lynn and we get agreement, then we have the department heads get together, say if they can get behind that, if there's going to be any hiccups. And then we move from there into a public hearing through us that we provide.
Right.
And then from there, we can move into adoption. At the same time, at that meeting of the department heads, I think it would be good to talk about changing what changes to the zoning code would need to be taken into consideration in order to make it so that the except ADU could be used.
But I think same deal, that same meeting with the department heads, they should be making notes on what other areas of the zoning code might need a tweak too. So we can get in front of that since we're all going to be in the same room.
And it's not just zoning code, like Title 12, transportation standards. Health may be, because they use the state code anyway, so that, that's more difficult for them to make changes. And I think I mentioned this to all of you or maybe individually, is our zoning ordinance is dated.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of changes.
Yeah. I mean,
that
the
we
zoning
do.
code should be updated. It's,
Yes.
it's very old.
Most of our code should be updated,
It should be updated.
but
So-
there's strings tied to those.
Yeah. The interesting part is going to be doing, I don't know, multiple facets at multiple times. I mean, we obviously have Title 12 Road Committee starting to work on that project and just kind of incorporating everything at the exact same time since we're doing so many things at once.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so I guess my purpose, I think I get that across, is right now is some challenge to allow short-term rentals for all parcels.
Right.
So there's some
So
exception.
we might make an ordinance that makes it legal, but it's still illegal until we fix the rest of it.
Yes, I just want.
I wouldn't say it's illegal. It's just not, it wouldn't be permitted.
Yeah.
Any like that we have codes that
Right.
allow all kinds of activities that you can't do every activity in every zoning code
Right.
across the.
They're not going to
County,
be any
it's
more
not.
illegal than they already are.
Yeah.
So let's just, one thing at a time, we'll move forward.
We have, and I will be curious to hear, because I know, ADUs were a lightning rod, as Mochi said before. Whether they will be or not, if the idea, because that was a carefully crafted compromise that was specific about not using them for short-term rentals. But that was in 2014. We have, 6 years of experience now with them. And, for the most part, we have not, all the issues that the folks that were opposed to ADUs never happened, so.
The sky didn't fall.
The sky did not fall. It
This
did not
weekend.
double the density in the county. They've been very limited in their use. To my knowledge, we have had no issues with them at all. And so that kind of provision before, it's time to take a look at that and see, what's the difference.
There's some, like, we have distance provisions in our code, how close your ADU can be sited. Like the square footage and how many bedrooms you
Right.
can
Yes,
have.
you do.
Yeah.
You're aware of that,
My
right?
mother-in-law is way too close to my house.
So
Yeah.
if we open that up, that will be another opportunity.
That was on purpose. Yeah.
So anyway,
So yeah, I'll be curious as far as, hopefully, maybe it's much ado about nothing. Maybe nobody's gonna really care.
Public process.
The public process. Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
No, I think we're gonna get squeaky wheel screaming about a lot of these things, but I don't know that it's a majority scream or a squeaky wheel scream.
Well, as always, I'll listen, and if there's legitimate concerns that we can help to mitigate, then fine.
If it's 5% of the population screaming, and the other.
Well, it's always,
We're happy with
that's
it.
always hard as far as to gauge, because that is always hard, is like, you don't know how, how widespread is it? You can't
Well-
send every question to the voters to. get
Right,
a
and that's the
vote.
thing, and when you hold a public hearing about this, the only people that are gonna show up are either gonna be the renters or the squeaky wheels.
Right.
Joe Public, which is 90% of them out there, either don't know, don't care, don't have an
Right.
opinion, or it ain't a big enough issue for them without, standing in front of the grocery store and taking a random poll.
Right.
Which, weird things I plan on doing.
Okay.
So before lunch, one thing I think we can talk about is getting our committees filled. We've got that on the website. We need, on the website, I think we need a news flash on the front page. We need probably a better link on face of our page so that people know, because I had a hard time finding
I
it.
can avoid it.
Yeah, it's there. We need to make it a little more user
Easy to
friendly.
work your way through.
But in the same respect, I think now would be the time we put something in the newspapers and let the newspapers know we are looking for these positions. The one thing I would like to do is since we're not the 3 months ahead of time,
Right.
we're in it. We narrow that schedule up and say we're going to be taking applications between this state and this state, maybe 3 weeks or 2 weeks worth of applications, and then we'll start going through them. Because we've got a bunch that we need to.
We got to get appointed.
We got to get appointees done.
How many of these, and just a quickie, how many of these renewals, whatever that Mr. McClure is talking about, are actually citizens sitting on, as opposed to, oh, this one's housed by Fish and Wildlife, and this one's tribal, and this one's the Department of Ecology. Those are fine. We're obviously reappointing those people, but if there's any plain Jane citizens sitting on there, those need to hit the same, whatever, natural resources, whatever, Also, I still want to bring up that I believe we should have, even if it's a short-term, 6-month something, some kind of a solar panel board where we have pro-solar, anti-solar, maybe a developer, to get some commonality in there, even if it's a temporary thing. And I personally don't want that going to a already formed natural, or natural resources type of a board.
Why is that? I mean, explain that, because I'm
Why?
not taking a position one way or
Because
the
if
other.
it's a natural resources board, I want people pro and con on the board. If there's already 5 people on that natural resources board, unless you want to interview them and find out that, 2 are pro and 2 are con and 1 is undecided.
Okay.
I don't think you're getting the voices heard by the people that we should be listening to the voices of. And I don't know why it can't be a specific subcommittee just for solar, just for, because honestly, I think if there's some way, whether we do it that way or we have a public hearing next week, next month, that we give the solar group couple hours to speak, we call in a developer to speak. If we can facilitate getting them in the same room, we can alleviate a lot of pain for them and us in the future. And that was kind of one of my thinkings of the solar board as well. I think if you have a natural resources board looking at it, you're going to, I don't know if I'd use the word offend them, but and I don't know, I haven't talked to them, but they're going to feel left out of the process because they don't have a person involved in it. So then if you're going to do that, why do it? Anyway, sorry.
This lady.
I was just going to bring up that you actually have not approved your resolution yet.
Right.
I did send it to the PA for approval as to form. I've not heard back yet. Do you want to get that at least on the consent agenda, whether you?
I want to hear from him before we do it. I don't want to sign something in,
Send him a
something
reminder.
that he's gonna have a problem with.
Okay.
And this is why I think there's a couple of appointments that should go through before this process, but if you guys want them to go through this process, that's fine, but there's gonna be a lot more of them. When is the first planning meeting, do you know?
They didn't have one this last month, and I don't think
They
they,
have one I'm sorry for interrupting. I believe
So I
there's
thought I
one coming
heard,
up on the 1st of March.
that's what I thought, it was gonna be 1st of March, and obviously they're not making that one. We're not appointing by then. Now Board of Adjustments may not be a big hurry, but it sounds like at least one of Dave's choices is going to be a reappoint, so they would be already up to speed. But
Yeah, it looks at this point, it's the planning commission's March 15th. There is a board of adjustment on March 1st. At least it's on the calendar. I think that's
Right.
just a reoccurring,
It is. And
whether or
we
not
are
they
having
use
a
it or
meeting.
not. They are actually having
Yes.
one.
what do you think we have for a chance of reviews to form on this from the PA today? And we can get this thing rolling and in the newspaper and moving. And if we do that and we put it in next week's newspaper, we could, by second week in March, we could be reviewing applications. And in
by
terms,
second week in March, you're gonna need somebody on that board. So it's
I
gonna
don't-
make it crunch time is my point.
well, I don't know if the planning commission meeting has a decision or if it's a workshop or what they have. So we just need to find out from Mochi where that sits. And
Yeah.
I definitely won't be wanting to appoint the person who's filling my position unless it goes through this process, so.
Well, then we should probably get with Dave to find out how many citizens on the boards he's got over there. So
Yeah,
we're
we've
trying to throw just the short list out there to the paper, or are we throwing the long list for things that might be replaced a year from now?
Well, I think we can do, as far as the paper, maybe we can have, I want folks to have attention to the short term especially, but also maybe there's some reference to,
Discuss the.
yeah, as far as the
long-term
long term, because it's like, here's all the different things, and we will be adopting this more formal appointment process, and if you're interested, then.
We know the
submit
one
it.
planning, we know the one board of adjustment, well, two planning, because you got one to replace you over there.
We've got a lot of appointments. We've got all the documents. I guess
Yeah,
the
they're
main
coming
thing is someone needs to sit down with Lou so Lou can write an article on the thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And we can really.
Well,
start-
that's what I'm saying. I need I'm more than happy to sit down with Lou and kind of give him the gist of the whole program. I would just like a list of what are those names on the short list that we need filled in the next,
He has it.
including Mr. McClure's,
Oh, yeah, they're all on that big.
The big master list.
the big master list. If we can crop that down to a short list of the things we're really pushing in the next 21 days kind of thing.
That's what you want advertised, not directing the
Well-
public back to the,
No, it'll direct them
Website?
towards the main thing. I just want to be able to present Lou a short list of,
Oh,
this
that's-
is,
totally.
here's the short
doable.
list of things we're short for time on.
Right.
Yeah, no, if I have a short list with
These are the
that,
appointments that are currently or very soon going to be,
or
vacant.
already expired.
or are
or
expired
that
right
we're
now.
thinking about refilling.
Right.
Right, I can get you a short list easy.
And then waiting on the prosecutor, and I'll go talk to Lou. I mean, I don't know that he's, depending on if we get all this crammed through today, I imagine he can get it in the paper by next week, as long as we give him info by Thursday. If he's interested, but I've talked to him before and he sounded like he was interested, so.
Is the board indicating there, you want this as an add-on for this afternoon, or would you prefer to have it noted on the agenda for the public to see for approval for next week? And that is a question.
Well, I think the resolution that, we're gonna adopt, we're still waiting to hear back from the
Right.
PA. I think we should, reach out to the PA again
I
today and see if, because I would like to know, I can't see that there's any fatal flaws with it. I don't know what those would be, but, so I would at least from a planning perspective, plan to assume there's not gonna be any significant change, maybe a tweak or something in that the resolution's okay with the process that we've come up with.
Mhm.
And I guess, because at the last, because I know how government works, it takes us to get it on the agenda, to do all this stuff. There's nothing that says we can't do that, and then if there's some big thing, you just pull it, you don't take action on it. But it's really hard to add things
Right.
at the last
My
minute.
worry is come out with a big press release and then, a week after that go, whoops.
Yeah, but I don't see that. Like, we know we have vacancies. We know we always have had, we just didn't have a formal process or people applying. We always have, have advertised of a sort. That's no different than this, is that we have these vacancies. You could do the story right now, that we have vacancies right now. We want people to apply for
So
them.
yeah, as long
Put
as,
your name in, throw your hat in the ring.
as
Let us
long as I
know.
have a document to provide Lou that kind of goes over, it has a link to the webpage that has all the application and all the boards and all that kind of stuff, where he can go kind of do his own research there. But a short list of the things that we're really looking for in the next 21 days. And all that documentation on a piece of paper, all come in, whatever, tomorrow, Thursday, whenever you get it done, and go have a meeting with him if that's good with you guys. And we might still reach out to you guys for comments and.
Yeah, let's get moving on it. We get to, the more
Okay, can we go back? Let's have, since we have time and it's, we don't have anybody on the schedule, it's a public meeting, so, and it's always it's challenging for us to have conversations because we have to do them in this room. Let's go back to the solar committee. I want to kind of talk through that. No, I just really am, I want to understand. I'm not taking a position one way or the other.
No, my thinking on it is there's obviously,
And who are they advising and what would be the purpose?
well, they're just advising us, I guess I would say, on a more, what do citizens on both sides think needs to happen around here? And it's also, I guess it was a way to show the public that we are listening. It's a way to show the public we do care about what you say, and it is just an advisory role to us, where then we can look at what they say and decide whether we want to go forward and open an EOZ or not, or just make an ordinance for solar issues or not, or just educating the public. But I don't think having a whatever natural resources board, which looks to me like they're all expired on there anyway. You'd have to reappoint all new ones for it. And when it's really only looking at a single topic, which would be solar, if that's necessarily going to give those citizens that want a voice. Now, I think there's calm and rational citizens on that side that can sit on that board and be fine, and there's other ones that I wouldn't want to appoint to that board because I don't think they can be calm and rational. But it would just be a place for them to get their voices heard, with no guarantees that there's an outcome when it gets back to us.
Okay. I'll give that some thought. I'm trying to think, historically, I'm trying to think of an example. It wasn't ever repealed, but I don't know if they even had terms, but we did have a solid waste marketing advisory committee that was a small group that we had folks that was the same. It was not the same in that it wasn't about a specific, potentially controversial land use issue. It was to provide advice to the board about efforts the county should be or shouldn't be taking in marketing the landfill. So it's not like there's no precedent for it. Okay, I'll give it some thought as far as from my perspective. Any comments? Commissioner Anderson.
My first.
Or concerns.
Yeah, my first thought is it concerns me. And my first thought is if we're reconstituting the Land and Natural Resources Board, solar definitely fits into that because a lot of solar is going to be on ag land. That has a broad swath of interested parties, whether for or against solar. All of those appointments need to be reappointed, and we're going to go through.
No,
the
they need to
process.
be changed.
Huh?
They need to be changed.
That's what I mean. All those
Not
positions.
reappointed.
No, yeah. And they have to apply for it, just like anybody else. And that would be the right place to have that discussion at a broad scale that people that they could give advisement to us three. We are also going to be heavily involved in this because we're going to go on this tour and it comes up every day. And if we are to build like a solar ordinance, the place I would see that coming from would be that kind of a broad-based board that looks at everything from economic development to environmental to agricultural issues. That's where I see that would have the best chance of something that's a settled agreement would come from is a broad-based board. So that would be my first thought. Having just a forum for 2 people for and 2 people against, to me, that's just a recipe for disaster. It's like pitting 2 people against, head to head. And then giving like the Cease group 2 hours and a solar company 2 hours. Yeah, I can see us having a workshop on solar, like and letting them come and present for 2 hours. I don't know if it needs to be in front of a subcommittee or anything, because I want to sit in on that anyways. I mean, if somebody's going to talk for 2 hours, we get, I don't know, daily emails, it seems, from Cease, and I read them all and all their different information. So I am trying to get as educated as possible on this issue. I also look at the Facebook posts and see everybody who says that we aren't doing anything with regards to this. So I'm very cognizant of the situation, and I'm trying to think of the most logical way through from one end to the other.
Yeah, I would say for me, I'm more inclined to have a information gathering hearing before the board. And if they feel, because again, same thing that Commissioner Anderson said, we're all getting, it's not like we're not hearing from folks. We are hearing from folks. It's in a less formal way because we're getting emails, and I read them all. I get phone calls from them. I talk to them. Again, we have no project in front of us. What they're asking for is a legislative action. It's totally appropriate we can all talk to whoever we want to talk to at this point. I guess if the question that's really before, or they want to be before us, because we've talked about this, and at this point, it's the status quo. If we want to consider not doing that, where we would either open up the EOZ or write some solar farm, sub ordinance that's in there, then the decision to do that would be the board's decision, and the board could I guess, entertain discussion on that, information to that. I don't see if
So
it's
if I hear you correctly, you're saying at this point, because of our current policy, you don't see the need for that unless the board decides they want to make an amendment or open the EOZ or have some solar
Right.
ordinance, then we go there possibly.
right, but if
Is that
they're
your-
right, because I guess at this point, because that's what the industry is not advocating for us to do that. They obviously, the status quo is it is allowed in the EOZ, it's allowed in the zones that they're thinking about potentially building them. So we're not getting any push from the industry to even have a discussion about it. We are getting a push from folks that don't want.
Right, and I get that, and I totally understand.
And
that.
again, I'm not necessarily opposed, I'm willing to, let's have that discussion.
Well, and I
and it
think
could
we
be
will
that
have that
we-
discussion over the next year or two of this process, and I think the citizens need to understand that, and I think they will, and we will have hearings, and we will possibly have motions for amendments later. But so yeah, no, I'm fine with that the way it is. I did.
Because I will say for the record, I've actually been contacted by just as many people that are actually in favor of.
Right.
So this idea, they're not necessarily
Well,
writing, calling in every public comment period, but I have been contacted. Now, I would say it's rough. And do they have, most of them have some vested interest in seeing projects go forward? There's going to be some, maybe they're going to be a leaseholder. Maybe again, I don't have any issue with that. Just like most of the folks that don't want to see the projects go forward have a vested interest in them not
Right,
going.
but I
So
think-
it's an equal thing.
Well, I get it, but I think you guys are thinking my whole subcommittee on solar is a committee that would push for not allowing solar and changing that policy, and that isn't my thought of the committee. My thought of the committee is, again, they would have to find neutral ground. This is pro and anti, finding neutral ground. Where are they going to find neutral ground? They're going to find neutral ground on our lack of ordinances, be it setbacks or whatever that they think we might need to add as an amendment or a specific solar ordinance. Hearing from both sides in that way, this isn't a solar subcommittee to, ban solar or reopen the EOZ for a thought of banning solar. That is not in any way, shape, or form on public record. My stance as of right now, and I don't think that's not what I'm looking for out of it. I'm looking for common ground, not anything else.
Right.
Anyway, just chew on that, think about it. Well, I'm sure.
Well, and I will say honestly, part of my decision about what we do, if anything going forward, is going to be based on, we got a solar tour coming up on the 25th.
Right.
Now I've been out there, but I was out there by myself with, and I want us to see, we may come back from that and we may have a legitimate cause to have a discussion about, maybe we need to look at some things and change some things with the existing. I am totally open to
Right.
that.
No, my solar board thought was just bringing it back up because we haven't talked about it in a month.
Right.
15th of last month, just keeping it out there, keeping it in your mind for future consideration. And, might be the middle of March where we talk about it again and decide whether we care. It might be the middle of the summer. I don't know. Just, I think if we are going to, if our plan is to do absolutely nothing, then no, we don't need a committee for anything. Right. If you want to hear from the public, go stand on the courthouse lawn with the sign that says, "Tell me what you think about solar." Somebody will stop and talk to you. If you think you might need some insight on whether we need any protections or ordinances or changing to our code or amendments without opening the EOZ, Just to, I guess I would say, put those safeguards that we all pretty much believe will be in the process. By the time this is all said and done, I don't see 500-foot setbacks. But the people that are going to be affected by the process, that's what they think. So if we can put those things that we know are going to more than likely be in the process into an ordinance, we can alleviate a whole bunch of head problems. And it also gives our planning director guidance when she's going through the process on what we want in the process. You know, we are the legislative authority of this county. We are the one that set rules and regulations, and you're telling your planning director to make this happen without giving her guidance on what those rules and regulations are. So she's got to deem them for herself, because currently there are none. It's the wild, wild west, as somebody I know likes to use. So you're making Moshi the legislative authority in the county when she's doing the permits, and I don't think
I
she
don't
wants
agree
to
with
be.
that. I don't agree with that statement. I think the ordinances have, that is the adopted, that's the law of Klickitat County as adopted by the legislative authority.
Mhm.
The directions are in there. Is there some discretion in there? We always talk about, we want to be able to have some discretion, and I'm not gonna get into it's just, I guess the idea, I understand the idea of a citizen committee, but I don't, where people want to feel like their voice is being heard. And I just don't see anything at this point. I don't see what that would accomplish other than
Okay.
they're going to be all they're going to do is they're going to get in a room and they're going to fight with each other. And again, they want their voice to be heard. Who's listening to their voice? We need to be having their voice being heard by the decision makers.
Okay.
And I would assert right now, their voice is being heard. Their voices, I'm getting all of those. I'm reading those. I'm listening to those. For folks that are frustrated, which I read the emails too, that there's only certain people are listening to them and others of us are not, just because somebody doesn't necessarily agree with you doesn't mean they didn't hear you.
I agree.
And I think there's a disconnect there.
I would say some of those emails are unjust.
Yeah, as far as that it's not, you know, and I also recognize that these projects, you know, potential or construct, you know, that are under construction, these are going to take place in your district and they're going to take place in my district. It is highly unlikely anything's ever going to be in District 1. It's just not, because of the way the sun is.
It's going to take place in your district, possibly until rezoning, and then they'll all be in my district.
Oh, as far as, after redistricting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be, it could all be, that's possible too, depending on.
Well, I don't know that it'll make the change this year, but 10 years from now,
Yeah,
then it'll probably, that whole area up there will probably all be free.
right. That's possible. So I would say at this point, I am totally open to, after I go on the solar tour, I am not opposed to us having a discussion.
Well, and I figured.
Are we still, do we want to take some input from folks about, should we open things up? Should we contemplate this? I'm open to that.
I would like to have the solar tour. I would like to have another, I don't know if it needs to be a workshop, but at least discussion with Moshi about solar with us. And then from there, we can move forward on whether we want to do a hearing or a subcommittee or anything like that. So that's kind of was my thinking the whole way along on it.
Okay.
I do understand there is plenty of time to do anything we feel like doing.
Okay, any other comments since we've got it?
One thing I wanted to bring up, if anybody's seen that bill about, there was the Supreme Court decision that overturned the no overtime for farm workers, the dairy, and then the Curtis King submitted a bill so that, so we had a bill from 1957 that said they were exempt from overtime. The Supreme Court overturned it and they didn't give any direction. And so how it says is that all of those businesses are liable for 3 years of those back wages. And then there's 38 lawsuits already that have been filed. My question then is, what will that do to our dairies in District 1?
Yeah.
What will that do to Dickey Farms? What's that going to do to our other people? So I reached out to Dickey Farms, and they're keeping a close eye on it. And if some movement doesn't happen, just that payment, 3 years of back, and then that bill that Curtis King
Did the
submitted.
Supreme Court say they had 3 years of back? Where did this 3 years of
Where
back
did
pay
that
come
come
from?
That's
Usually not a Supreme
that's
Court thing.
legislative. I think it's legislation.
I was gonna
on
say,
what-
Supreme Court usually doesn't do that, so.
No, but see, the problem is the Supreme Court, the dissenting opinion said that it's wrong because these people were operating under the law.
Right.
The Supreme Court said that the law was unconstitutional,
So that's
and
if it never
you
happened.
have to go back and pay it for 3 years and find it all back. The dissenting opinion said that's ridiculous. If they were following the law, how can you then go and put them out of business? Because that time and a half for 3 years of back is, the Capital Press said it could, and likely it's going to hit not just dairy, it's going to be all ag, and it's a $2 billion bill.
Right.
How do you come
How
up
do
with
you come up with
$2
that?
billion in the midst of COVID? So there's a very good chance that many of our agricultural businesses could go out of business if this doesn't go. And the other thing is many of them could go out of business because the lawsuits have already started. And I think that's something that we as a board, we should take a stand on.
Yeah.
We can discuss that this afternoon or think about it at lunch.
Yeah, I need to read more into that one.
Okay.
Not that I'm opposed to it, but it's kind of like your forest thing. I hate putting my name on something that I'm not researched.
You don't hate dairies?
No, I don't hate dairy.
Okay.
I don't hate milk cows.
Yeah.
But I want to know.
Yeah.
I want to know the finer details, including taxes and cost of citizens, and not just. I mean, sure, I love the idea, but I want to know the ramifications of the thing too. So I need to read it.
Okay.
That's all I got for
All you
you.
got for now?
What bill number was that, by the way? Maybe I'll have time to look at it during lunch.
I'm getting it for you right now. Well, this bill has been changed, Senate Bill 5172. So Curtis King wrote in his version of the bill that there would be no 3-year back. And then the Democrats on the committee.
I don't know how he can legislatively say that if the Supreme Court's demanding that back pay is back pay.
The Supreme Court didn't demand the back pay. The Supreme Court only ruled that the law was unconstitutional that was instituted in 19.
Got it. So nobody's demanded I guess I would say the farm workers filed the suit more than likely. And then
Is there
back
is there a
pay.
3-year window for, you know, payroll dispute? You can only go back 3 years.
Yeah, so
So
that's
that's probably where the 3 years.
That was
comes
probably
from.
the farm workers saying we want the 3-year back.
Yeah.
And the legislatures now. So this may not have a tax burden to the people. Because this may not be the state paying the back. So, yeah, no.
No, it's not the
I've got
state
it.
paying it back, it's
it'd be
the
the
farms paying it back.
Right, but it would either be the farmers paying it back or there is no back.
Right.
It wouldn't be taxpayers paying it back.
Right.
So that was the part I was far more worried about signing on to. So let me read it during lunch. More than likely, I'm good to go.
Okay, if nothing else, then we will adjourn for lunch. We'll be back at 1 o'clock for more exciting conversation.
So yeah, you can unrecord.
I will leave.
Are we doing lunch?
I actually have to, I'm gonna go meet with Mochi. I'm hoping on personal,
I can
I'm working on a project. I brought an